Hi, and welcome to The Parent Equation with me, Aisha Murray. I'm a coach and I primarily support working parents and carers who believe that parenthood shouldn't be a barrier to a successful and fulfilling career. In this podcast series, I chat to inspirational working parents and ask them to share their own experiences of raising children alongside their careers. We talk about the struggles and the moments of joy. And I hope in each episode there's something that can bring you a bit more strength and positivity. So please follow, listen and subscribe on all major platforms. Hi everybody and welcome to this episode of The Parent Equation. Today I have the great pleasure of being joined by Michael Ray. Michael is an Australian solo dad, a gender equality advocate, a water park enthusiast, a podcaster, a blogger, and has a new book on the way. So a very, very busy man. So thank you for sparing the time to be on this podcast today, Michael.
You're welcome, Aisha. Thanks for the opportunity.
So let's just start, I think, with understanding a bit about your journey. So you are a solo dad in Australia. So how did that come about and what's the journey been for you?
Well, I was a latecomer to the fatherhood madness, Aisha. I became a first-time dad at 49 years old.
Right.
Sadly separated when my daughter was only 9 months old. And from the age of 2, it's just been my daughter and I with her mum not playing any part in her life since she was 2 years old. So, it was a big change in lifestyle for me. Up until 49, I was a colourful character, I think you would say. I was a typical heteronormative, stereotypical man's man.
Yeah.
I grew up in a family where dad was the breadwinner, mum ran the house. They had a successful marriage, stayed together until dad passed. So completely gender typical upbringing at that stage where, boys didn't cry and all of those outdated things. And, I was very typical of it.
So your wife leaving, obviously, that in itself is quite an unusual journey to being a solo dad. That's not the normal story, I guess, for most people.
No. And it was without warning and without any preparation. Just one day she was there and the next day she decided not to play any further part in my daughter's life and had moved interstate. And that was it. So suddenly my whole world had been turned upside down. At that stage, we were 50-50. So, I was 4 days without Charlie and 3 days with. So, but when we first separated, I had a small car accident and they found out that I had some fairly major health issues just through a routine scan.
Right.
Found a few tumours and everything like that. So suddenly, wife had separated, hadn't seen my daughter, into hospital for all of these things. My life at that stage, as I explained it, had become like a house on fire with flames leaping through the roof and smoke billowing out through the windows. And suddenly I was forced to decide in that instant when I got the diagnosis what I was prepared to rush in and try and save. And the only thing that came to me, the only thing in that moment of crisis was the impact it was going to have on my daughter. So I call it the gift of clarity through crisis that was bestowed upon me in that instant. So suddenly all of the facade and ego and the male bravado at that stage that had got me through life, became glaringly obvious that it was just a complete waste of time, and it didn't matter what I had accumulated or achieved in life. Nothing mattered apart from me being there for my daughter. And that's how I've lived my life. It was actually a blessing. The best thing that ever happened to me was those hard times.
And at that point, when you gained that clarity, was your ex-partner still around at that point? Was it still 50-50 or had it moved more to your care by then anyway?
No, we hadn't even been through the court process. I had to go through the court process, the treatment, the diagnosis, and at that stage, because we'd entered into the separation, I was seeing my daughter spasmodically, but because of the treatment, I wasn't allowed to be near her for 3 days after radiation because the radiation leaches out. So you've got to be clear.
Okay.
So it was, the hospital was fantastic. They organised the treatment around my access days, and you know, it was just a really hard, horrible, dark time, wondering what the outcome of the court process was going to be, and what the outcome of the health crisis was going to be, and you know, just really not knowing what the future held for me or my daughter.
And are you fit and well now?
Yep, all good, all clear.
Good.
Just,
okay, that's
you
the
know,
main thing.
one tablet a day now, and that's it.
Yeah, good. So obviously, when you were going through this, and your first thought was your daughter, of course, how did you, I suppose, help her manage that change crisis, if you like? Because obviously for her as well, it'd be a huge change for her. Her father was suddenly very ill, and she's younger, obviously, but still, her father's very ill. She's going through the separation of her parents. How did you take her through that initial sort of change curve, if you like?
Well, thankfully, she was only 9 months old, so I don't think she was aware of it. At that age, the concept of time isn't developed at all. So if ever any of this was going to happen, and including her mum stepping out of her life at 2 years old, if ever there was going to be a good time for things like this to happen, you know, I was very fortunate that they happened when they did.
Yeah.
But even at 2 years old, when her mum stepped out of her life, I was doing stand-up comedy.
Okay.
So the first night, because it didn't happen, mum just didn't show up for changeover. At 2 years old, my daughter was on stage at a fairly large comedy club with me. And, you know, I'm at the back of the room while the other comedians on, I'm having to yell, "Hey, what's your language?" Like, you know, so she came on stage with me and did a set at a comedy club at 2 years old. But
brilliant.
yeah, after that, you know, we got around it and we got through it, and you know, it's been great. It's been a really good thing for me. It's a little bit sad for Charlie and for her mum, but we manage.
You manage. And you've talked before, obviously, about, well, we talked earlier about this, the perception of a solo dad has its own stigmas, etc., associated with it. And then the perception potentially of a solo dad whose partner has left is another different story altogether. So did you come across negativity in your initial years of Charlie and being on your own with her?
Yeah. There's been some wonderful supportive. The majority of people have been really supportive, and a lot of it has been just brilliant. Some of it has been borderline patronising, and you know, when a lot of the times I get asked, you know, how do you cope? And you know, it's usually, as is like any single parent, sometimes just barely, but we get through. And then the follow-up question is, no, as a man raising a daughter. And it's like, I'm not sure, but, you know, it's not, you know, you wouldn't know what you were doing. And that's why I say, I'm not sure where the bias is worse for a woman who's judged harshly for not focusing on a child, or a man who's judged harshly for not being able to care for a child, because it's the same side of the opposite coin. And mums sometimes are judged harshly for not putting 100% into their kids, for having a career. You know, they'll be, you know, that's a great job, but what about your kids? And, you know, a lot of the times mums will be, well, I've got a husband who does it. Oh, but, you know, is he able? And it's these outdated gender expectations that are holding us all back, and that have become glaringly obvious to me. The fact that, you know, we don't have change rooms in men's toilets, and the fact that I think nearly every man at some stage has been challenged going into a parent's room to change their baby, as if we're not that welcome, or looked on with some sort of suspicion as to why we're in there. And I understand that, you know, we all find great agency and comfort in being a parent. I remain single on purpose, not just because of my looks and personality for the first first 5 years of Charlie's life, because a mum suddenly stepped out, I couldn't take the risk of someone getting attached to Charlie and vice versa, and it not working out. And I think if there was anyone interested in pursuing a relationship with me, I think 90% of the time it was because they wanted a relationship with Charlie as much as they wanted a relationship with me.
Yeah.
So I had to hold them back, and it just wasn't fair on them. But I've now met the most amazing partner for the last 2 years we've been together.
Okay.
And
Good.
I've got to say, we spend weekends together. So it's still Charlie and I during the week, and every weekend we're at my partner's house. And I know what it feels like to feel marginalised when suddenly she's calling out for my partner instead of me. It's a little bit like, really? You know, it's like I become like a dirty dishcloth on the weekends. I'm ignored completely. During the week, I'm still the sun rises and sets with me, but on the weekends it's, you know, Bub, do you want help with that? No, it's okay. Robin's going to do it. And there's a little dagger. So I understand what it's like. Yeah. And I think that's something that holds back gender equality, because sometimes there's maternal gatekeeping that goes on where, as I said, we find great agency and purpose in being there for our children.
Yep.
And there are other times when we, gee, I wish someone else would, you know, do this, when they've been, you know, on you all day about it, and you just can't wait to hand Bub over at the end of the day if dad or mum comes home, and, you know, you can do the changeover. But yeah, just for every inequity that happens with women, there's a corresponding one that happens with men. And when I speak to men and women, that's why I say, if we could draw a Venn diagram, the overlap, women want, a lot of women that I speak to want more of a life outside of the family.
Yep. Yep.
A little bit more stimulation, things like, and a lot of men want more involvement within the family.
Yeah.
And if we just got together in the same tent and
talked about it.
Yeah. And, you know, but that's the thing, we need to, as I say, we need to enable, encourage, and expect men to be held equally responsible. The enable bit is government policies, workplace initiatives, all of those things that enable men to do it. Because at the moment, here in Australia, fathers are entitled to 2 weeks at minimum pay for maternity leave.
Yeah, yeah.
2 weeks at minimum pay in Australian dollars is about $714 a week before tax. So if dad's earning an average income, it's about 1/3 of what dad's income is. So a lot of the times it's painted as a gendered choice with dads, because a lot of dads don't take the full 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But it's actually a financial decision that's taken for the benefit of the family, where they go, well, mum has to recover from the birth. She needs the time off.
Yep.
So, you know, we have to decide who's primary and who's secondary. And once we nominate mum as primary, we can't change it over. So we can't actually go, well, we have 10 weeks here in Australia. We can't actually go, well, you take the first 5 and I'll take the second 5. It's all to one parent and 2 weeks to the other parent.
Yeah.
And right there in that instant, I find the gender roles for the family can be set in an instant, because in that instant, all of a sudden dad goes, right, well, the best I can do is help. And once he's helping mum, he's the assistant. It's mum's the boss with the baby and I'm the assistant. So we come home, and because we've been brought up in a society that says maternal instinct, only a mother's love, mother knows best, all of the marketing and the hallmark fetishized images of motherhood, it actually casts mum into that role and casts dad into doubt themselves, where we honestly believe, and I believed, that there's some secret source that mum knows. Well, she, you know, it's just natural. But it's a learned skill, parenting, and it puts immense pressure on mums who may be struggling with all of the normal frustrations of raising an infant, whether it be colic or sleep deprivation or breastfeeding or even postnatal depression. All of these things, they don't actually only impact a woman's perception of motherhood, but because women are brought up to be, you're a woman when you become a mother and it's all
Yeah.
about mothering, it can actually lead women to doubt themselves and to put themselves under immense pressure as failing somehow or being flawed as a woman, not only as a mum. Whereas with dads, we don't have that weight of expectation on us, but we defer to mum all the time.
Yeah.
What should I do? How should I do this? And if a young couple bring home a baby together, first baby, no previous experience, there's a fair chance that mum would have read a lot of books and researched on it, and dad hasn't. But we also have things like all of the scans, the prenatal scans, and all of these things. The preponderance of evidence shows that fathers who are actively involved pre-pregnancy and during pregnancy stay overwhelmingly and disproportionately involved throughout the child's life. But we have workplaces that say, it's your wife that's going for the scan. It's just a scan, and I think it needs to be enshrined in our workplace agreements that, pregnancy isn't something that just affects mothers. Women don't just become mothers, we all become parents, and we need to treat it as such.
And as you say, none of us are trained to be parents, mothers or fathers, until that child arrives. No one knows what they're going to have to do with it or how it's going to work. And I think on the topic of books, I think you're right, because I know my husband read some books when I was pregnant the first time, and the books themselves defined him as a very specific, there were books for dads going through pregnancy or supporting your wife through pregnancy, but the way they were written was, as you say, entirely defining what that man's role was going to be for the rest of his life, which is just bizarre. It was written by dads for other dads, but it wasn't helping his start of fatherhood, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I think what's happened too is we've become that specialized and specific that it's actually scary to first time dad. And we think like, oh no, I'm going to ruin this kid. I'm going to get it wrong. And that's why I say they're fairly strong, sturdy little kids. And it's not that complicated. If they're crying, I've learned it's either gas hunger or a nappy, or tired, and if you put them down and they won't sleep, they're not tired. It's, but we've made it so complicated, and we fear that, one day my child's going to be on the news for torturing small animals because I didn't sing lullabies or, and with mums, the pressure they feel, there's actually such an intensive mothering where they have to be seen to be doing everything, whereas dads are seen or portrayed, especially in media, as a bumbling man-child that just is no help and is actually another child for mum to have to look after, which just makes it worse. And my mum raised three kids. Two of them turned out okay. Apparently I'm suspect. But I even noticed with my mum, she would be with Charlie, and it's, trying to tell her, Mum, try this, works for her. And she tried and it worked. And that's what I say. And that would work for 3 or 4 weeks. And then suddenly it wouldn't work. But you would get, now I've got it again. And I'd go back and mum would have her and she'd, no, mum, try this. And that's what I was saying. It's just time in role. And it's really, we need to move away from the mother knows best. And we just need to make it practice is what makes progress, regardless of your gender.
Absolutely. And you talk about bumbling fathers there, and I think it's very sad to see still that portrayal of bumbling fathers in the media and on TV. And inevitably, when you see a solo dad or a stay-at-home dad on TV in a program or whatever it is, they are portrayed, as you say, a bumbling father who is not really capable of holding down a job, which is why he's a stay-at-home dad, or he's kind of wearing a self-knitted cardigan and has, all these sort of hippie traits about him, which just perpetuates the view of what a solo dad or a stay-at-home dad is. And is that the same? That's a UK perspective, obviously, from my point of view. Is that the same in Australia?
Oh, exactly the same here, Aisha. I worked as a elite level strength and conditioning coach. So I worked in a really masculine, hyper masculine thing. I trained world champion boxers, elite level footballers, like our top professional footballer teams, and the banter in the rooms and the gyms and stuff like that. And then when I said to them, I'm stepping away, I'm not going to do this anymore. And it's still, I still get calls now. When are you going to come back and work full time? And that's why I say, no, it's not for me now. My focus is on what I do in the media and in the equality world.
Yeah.
And it's, but, you know, and I still leave 3 days a week clear where I can walk my daughter to school, where I won't take appointments in the morning or the afternoon. So, you know, there's only 2 days during the week where I'm not there in the morning to take her to school. And I'm there every night. I won't work past a thing, because after being sick and not knowing what the future held, it made me realize, you know what, I can reorganize my life, and that innovation that happens within constraints. I've found ways now where, you know, Zoom and everything else, you find all these ways to be more efficient. And that's when I speak to organizations. So you'll never find somebody more creative and more productive than a parent, because we get stuff done because we have to get stuff done. So it's actually a business skill, and it's a team leader's skill.
And that's what I find with when I work, the clients I have, especially, tend to be more the working mums who come forward for it, but they go back after parental leave, after a year off potentially, obviously in the UK, and they don't feel like their employers are appreciating all the new skills they developed over the past year. They're just perceived quite often as they've just been on holiday for a year and have sort of missed out work. They haven't been doing anything apart from looking after a baby. So what's that? But as you say, the skills and the learning curve you go on being a new parent is immense. So what you can bring to the workplace then is of huge value.
I think one of the biggest problems we had, and divisive in some ways and misguided, was when we classified breadwinning as somehow separate from caregiving. It's allowed workplaces to be willfully blind to our parental responsibilities. Well, you're the breadwinner, you're secondary caregiver. To me, a secondary caregiver is a grandmother or childcare or, you know, and breadwinning, if you look at the figures for the 20% of children who live in poverty, for their outcomes, their educational, psychological, social and behavioural outcomes, breadwinning could well be one of the most important caregiving things that you can do, being able to provide for that family. But when I speak to men, you know, I'd say, you know, what's your role as a father? I'm a provider and I'm a protector and, you know, I'm a disciplinarian. And that's why I say, well, you are a provider. You're the provider of nurturing. You're the provider of warmth and safety. You're a protector. You protect your child's self-esteem by giving her values. You protect her from being influenced by peer pressure, by exemplifying character and values that her sense of self will come from. You know, and disciplinarian, the true meaning for discipline is teach. So you're there to teach, to be the example. So we just need to slightly reframe it. And there are a lot of unique benefits that come from having an involved present father that science is discovering day by day. I've started studying developmental psychology, and in my entire first semester at university, fathers weren't mentioned once in the entire literature. Everything was mothers this, mothers influence, mothers need to do this. They didn't even bring it back a little bit with parents. So all of the tests are done on attention and gaze, and when the mother's voice, the child's gaze is averted, and it's just mother, mother, mother. There were even studies from as recent as the late 80s that had over 2,000 parents or mothers in the cohort, and it was surveying regarding parenting styles, and not one father in 2000. You know, so they're talking about parenting styles and the impact on childhood development, and they didn't involve one father. And
unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's why I say here in Australia currently, single father households are the fastest growing demographic in Australia, estimated to grow between 40 and 65% by our 2041 census, so in 20 years. And again, we still don't have change tables in male toilets. We have just 1 in 5 single parent households are fathers. So, you know, when I do talks, that's why I say, hold up your hand and what do you see? Is there anything that looks unusual there? And everyone will say, no. Is there anything that's uncommon? And I say, well, we could say your thumbs are uncommon because it's only 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
But they're not unusual. And that's the problem with fathers in the main caring role or as the hands-on provider, they're still it's seen as unusual rather than just factually it is uncommon.
Yeah.
But it's still seen as unusual. Oh, but do you really, can't you get a job? And it's like, no, I've never been more happy or more fulfilled in the role that I've got now. And I wouldn't give it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're probably, I suppose, maybe a bit ahead of Australia, are we, in the UK with regards to that? So we do have, not everywhere, but we do tend to have more changing tables in men's loos. And obviously we've got parental leave now, which is, although not taken up by the majority of men, is certainly something that's on the table. And a lot of the big corporates are embracing it properly and not just paying lip service to it. So why do you think that's not the case in Australia? What needs to change for you guys to make that happen?
Australia, we still have a real macho man type, tough it up. But we also have 9 suicides a day in Australia. 7 of them are men. We have over 63,000 suicide attempts by men each year. And we can see clearly preponderance of evidence that shows that the more gender equitable society is, the less mental health. When you look at Norway and Denmark, they have 50% of the mental health and suicide rates for men is what we do here. And they have one of the highest male take up of parental leave.
Yeah.
Countries that have the highest maternity leave for women, I think it's Estonia. It can be up to 80 months, have the largest gender pay gap, because of course you can see where it starts. The longer you're out of the workforce, and also too, as employers, gee, if I employ this woman and move her up into the C-suite, and then she takes her 80 months off, I'm in the thing, so they may hold them back and limit their advancement. But here in Australia, we have this culture. A lot of the top tier companies now are really good on the shared parental leave. But it's, as I say, shared parental leave has become a little bit like Fight Club.
Yeah.
We have it, but don't talk about it. And while we've still got men do this, I drank more than you, I worked 80 hours, I was sending emails at 10 o'clock. And I've always found in my realm as a elite strength and conditioning coach, and I think it's the same for organizations, you actually have to manage overperformance more than underperformance. Right, and until organizations start going, you know what, Tom, don't you have a school run to do? You need to go. Or again, as I say, once they're enabled, then they have to be encouraged and then actually expected. So when they have a culture that these men are bragging about working 80 hours and I haven't seen my kids for 3 weeks and all the rest of it, they need to be looked at as, that's where the odd comes in. It's, you're kidding. Like, why? Because as I said, I think a stat I read, which is really eye-opening, is 75% of the time that we spend with our children in total is before the age of 16.
Really? Okay.
So, and that's why I say you've got the rest of your life to make your career up. We're working later and later. Unless you're in a hard physical job, you can always make this up. But, those times with your children and that connection with your children set them up for life. That's where everything starts.
And I'd say probably even pre-16, those really formative years when my kids are younger. So the sort of primary school years when, as you said before, setting that example and being that role model, mum or dad, it's vitally important as they're sort of finding their way in life for those first few years. So I was just while you're talking about the overworking, do you think with this new culture now of the remote working and everyone's obviously at home and working behind screens, so senior management, colleagues, team members, etc., are seeing behind people what's going on in their life? They're seeing kids running past, they're seeing the cat jumping on the laptop, etc. Do you think being exposed to employees' home life and seeing the context they're in is helping, I suppose, senior management support their employees and support their overworking, or try and tell them, don't overwork, we can see you've got kids, we can see you've got a life outside of work? Do you think that's making a difference?
I would love to think so, Aisha. I believe so. Anecdotally, I do. My daughter now has got play dates all over the world because of Zoom, because she's come in and other people, children have come through. So every now and again, they'll all get together and she'll show them. We live rural, so we've got kangaroos and emus and everything in the backyard. So, you know, they all get together and show each other pictures from where they're from.
Yeah.
Up until this point, I just had sort of a cursory business relationship with these people. And for too long, we've gone with that work-life balance.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work for me. We need to have work-life integration.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, there are bits where we need to integrate and work together. And that's why I say to a lot of the dads who struggle with time, I've gone, there are ways to kill two birds with one stone. You know, you tell me you don't have time to exercise, and because you want to see your kids, exercise with your kids. It doesn't have to be at the gym. Get out and kick the ball and run around and challenge them. They will love it. You know, the school run, you know, make it a thing where you can chat, play your games in the cars, and you can, the moments between the moments often get overlooked. You know, and it's just, if you can give them 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes first thing when you get home and 30 minutes after dinner, you know, that's it. It doesn't have to be magical weeks away at the beach or anything like that. But until workplaces realise that our why, the reason our careers are important to us, apart from satisfaction and mental stimulation, all the rest of it, is to provide for our families. They're going to have high turnover in staff. They're going to have distracted staff members, because if you're struggling at home, I can't see you being able to perform well at work. If your marriage is struggling because you're committing, you know, too much time and focus to work because you're under pressure, you're going to end up with burnout and mental health issues. And then if a divorce happens, you know, it's just all wrong. It's, you know, for too long, workplaces have shaped our family dynamics rather than the other way around. And that's why I'd say to, you know, a lot of the top-down initiatives where we go, right, we've put this in, gender equality here, this level here with government, this proposal there, until we have gender equality within the home, none of that stuff is going to be able to take it up, because all of these opportunities now for mums or women where they can achieve all of this, how are they going to carry that opportunity with both hands when they're still carrying the load at home? Because dad's workplace hasn't gone, well, we know you've got a home life. So dad's is stuck in that work mode. Mums now have the opportunity to work outside of the home. So I think a lot of the initiatives have simply added more pressure. They've made it easier for mums to work outside of the home, but they still expected to maintain the work inside of the home. That sets the next generation up for, that was my example, that was my experience, this is what I look for in a partner. I pity the poor man that thinks my daughter is going to do more than her fair share at home. And if there's anything positive about the high divorce rate, it might be that there are no longer mum and dad jobs for our kids. There's just stuff needs to get done jobs at home. But, you know, that's why I'd say, if we begin with equality within the home, choose your partner carefully, man, woman, or non-binary, your choice of partner is going to have a huge impact on your career when you're having a family, then it will become the default for our children. So, you know, if I go for a job now and they say, right, we need you to travel on the weekends for teams and stuff, well, I can't. I've got family commitments. If I had a partner, well, eventually the workplaces would have to go, well, you can travel on the weekends with the team and we'll give you weekdays off. Because suddenly now flexible work and work from home and all the rest of it has become mainstream because men are involved, men are recruited. Up until this point, it's all been seen as a woman's issue. Affordable childcare is often cited as a barrier to women entering the workforce. It's a barrier for parents entering the workforce. So, you know, we need to all get on board and all be together in the same tent. And, you know, that's what will make the difference and move this forward, is when we begin in the home rather than the top down.
Yeah, I think we also need men to speak out like you do and step up and step forward and put their views forward, because as I said just a little while ago, the majority of people who seek out coaching for working parents coaching for whatever reason are women.
Mm.
And you find, I don't know why that is. I mean, people have said to me before, because men are scared about appearing to be vulnerable, or they don't want to admit they have a problem, or they don't want to admit X, Y, and Z. So until I think the working fathers can have the confidence to say, actually, this is how I feel. I'm with Michael on this, and I want to stand by him. Then that's also needs to happen alongside, obviously, the employer support, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's why I say, though, Isha, it's not that surprising. We won't ask for directions. So to ask somebody how to parent, it's just, and we won't speak out for health. We suffer in silence with, mental illness, and we don't go to the doctors, and all of these silly macho things. And that's why I say, when I speak to men, you want to show me you're brave, admit that you've been scared. You want to show me that you're courageous. Tell me that you're not fulfilled or that you're vulnerable, because the only way to get through to live a truly invulnerable life is to accept your vulnerability. I know I used to go to school drop-off dressed in my work gear, even though I had the day off, because I didn't want people to think that I was an unemployed single dad. And then it made me realize, if I'm not as they think I should be, if they see me as different, does that really matter? And then I finally thought, you know what? It only matters to my daughter. She's the only one. And once I was able to cast off that ego and facade, all of a sudden it didn't matter. And that's why I say to guys, hey, your child can't tell the difference between your ego and your reality. So don't be that guy. Decide what sort of father you want to be. Decide what stories you want your children to tell their children, so your grandchildren, and just be that dad. It's that simple.
Yeah. And it's self-imposed ego, isn't it, as well? It's not what other people are thinking, it's what we put on ourselves.
Yeah. And that's why I say, if I see somebody who's different than what I thought they'd be, they're interesting. And that's why I say to guys, just because you're not how I pictured you, I find that interesting. I want to know more. I'm not going, well, that's weird, there's something wrong. It's really interesting. Like, please tell me more. So don't be scared to stand out, because there are a lot of men standing around in groups of other men wanting to belong to this group. And in that group, they're all trying to belong to the group, and they're all behaving as they think they should behave to fit into this group, and no one's actually being themselves. And when I get a group of dads together, some of the conversations are just incredible, and the tears and the emotions, and once it's a safe space and they fit in, it's just incredible to see, and the transformation is great. But that's why I say to them, you've got to be on board with your partner. It's easy for me because I'm a single dad. It's all my way, and I can figure it out. But you've got to discuss this with your wife if you want to be more hands-on. You can't just impose your will. You've got to come to an agreement about what's right and what's wrong. So a lot of mums, we all know as parents the drawbacks of helicopter parenting or snow parenting or doing everything. And when I'm in a group of mums and I hear them talk about how useless their husband is and how I wish he was more like you, and that's why I say, but have you actually given him a chance? And oh no, he won't do this. But have you honestly let him figure it out? Because a different approach that achieves the same outcome is a good thing. So as long as you're on the same page with the big picture things, how you get there doesn't really matter. And having different parenting styles is a great thing, because all your children's life, they're going to come across different bosses, different teachers, different friends that all have different personalities and different characteristics. So as long as the big picture things, the outcomes, the values are all based on the same thing, now there's nothing wrong with one of you being the stern drill master and one of you being the fun, relaxed one, as long as at the end of the day, it's who you authentically are.
Yeah, as long as you're a team at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's it.
Children and dogs included. Our dog is part of our team. Apparently, he has to live within his house with all of us and abide by the rules and play the game.
That's it.
So, Michael, I don't want to run out of time before talking about your new book. So tell me a bit more about that.
It's called Who Knew? It's out in June, in time for Father's Day in the UK.
Okay.
And it's just a compilation of the things I've come to realize.
Mm.
So, just a lot of things that dads do naturally, rough housing and all the rest of it, had some real great benefits for children as far as anxiety and risk taking and things like that go. And when I speak to groups, a lot of the times I'll have a mum come up and say, oh, but I don't have a male in my child's life. Is she or he going? And that's why I say it's the behaviour. It's not the gender of the person doing it. So mums need to encourage rough housing and risk taking, and really bite the thing instead of mums want to protect and dads want to go on, give it a try. And that's why I say I've realised when we say to kids, be careful, well, they don't know what careful is. So I always say to my daughter, what's the plan? And that gives her the hint that, oh, hang on, I need to pay attention. There's something, you got to figure this out, bub, because it's not easy. And I'll do this. And so, and it's about that. And a lot of it's around some of the things that have happened. I was banned from my daughter's 4-year-old ballet concert because I was a male. They wouldn't let me backstage.
Oh, really?
And that's, yep.
Oh, I thought maybe you'd done something to deserve it, but obviously not.
No, and that's why I say I worked as a swim teacher. So in Australia, we have what's called a working with children check. So I've got my license where, I can work with other people's children.
Yeah.
And it was simply because I was a male and the only male at ballet, but we'd been there for 2 years. All of the other mums, because I became an honorary mum sitting in the hall all those hours waiting for class to end, they all caused a scene and said, well, if Michael's not backstage, we're not. And that's what started me on the advocacy and equality pathways, because it went national. Like every news picked it up, because I had to go to the Equal Opportunity and kick up a fuss because it was a gender-based thing. And so
entirely.
I used the exact same rules that apply for women being discriminated against as what, I used that and said, but this is solely because I'm a man, and it was overturned. But that's where it all started off. But that's why I said, my daughter's got challenges all of her life, but at that stage we were just going through our marriage equality debate here, trying to legalise same-sex marriage. And that's why I said to the school, well, soon you're going to have 2 mums, 2 dads. This is a wonderful opportunity to show that, you're the contemporary liberal arts, the bastion of forward thinking, and you're saying we can't have a man. And that's why I said some of the discrimination that women face going into the workforce, well, men face those barriers from their employers, marketing, even the media, and even mums who may feel marginalised trying to get in to the parenting. So that's why I say I'm not a father advocate, I'm an equality advocate, because if men are empowered to be dads, women are empowered to be everything else that dads have, but it needs to be a choice. Nothing wrong with being a stay-at-home mum, and there's equally nothing wrong with being a stay-at-home dad, and there's nothing wrong with finding great satisfaction and fulfillment in a career for a woman. And the same with a dad. Women shouldn't be judged with, oh, but what about your kids? Whereas a man's praised.
So I think I heard. Was there also a story I think I read on your blog about? I think it was an offer about your mummy comes free offer or something.
That was in the ballet concert. They had a mummy and me ticket offer.
Right.
There was a 3-hour dress rehearsal, and it was mothers are expected to be present for the full 3-hour dress, and it was just mother. And that's the thing that's frustrating. It seems like in contemporary society, parenting is the last bastion to have the gender lens removed from it. And it's still, and that's why I say, a lot of the times when I say, oh, you're a great dad, and I say, no, look, the bar for a great dad, it's sort of like being the tallest jockey. Or that you look good for your age. It's no, I want to be a good parent. Mum shouldn't be judged more harshly or held to a higher standard, and dad shouldn't get away with doing the bare minimum. That's why I say to dads, I love you all, like I'm amazed by you, but I'm not going to fall all over myself and praise you to death just for doing basic parenting stuff. And I love a compliment as much as the next guy, but a lot of the well-meaning compliments are almost patronising. And it's, I know they come from a good place, but it's sort of like saying to I'm not sure, an immigrant, gee, you speak really good English.
Yeah.
You know, it's not it's not something that we should be doing.
No, you don't want the pat on the head, do you?
No. One of the funniest things was when Charlie was an infant, I think I would be told at least once a week, don't wipe a bum in the wrong direction. You've got to make, and it's just really, I had never ever thought about wiping it in the wrong direction, but I don't know, that was the first thing. And it's really like, how many children are dying each year from having their bums wiped in the wrong direction by dads? Like, somewhere there's a hospital wing, especially for, wrong direction bum wipes.
There will be now. There will be now.
The other one I get is, what are you going to do when she reaches puberty? It's like, what do you mean? She's going, what happens when she starts with the periods? And it's go, I'll do the same as anything else. Oh, but won't you be uncomfortable? And that's why I say, if there are certain topics that are uncomfortable for you to discuss with your children, it's not your topic. That's the problem. It's your connection.
Yeah.
And it's not about the day that you need to speak about it. It's about the years preceding it. There's nothing that my daughter and I don't discuss, and some of it, I think I need a face full of Botox sometimes with the stuff she comes out, so I don't look surprised. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, no, that's fine. Let's sit down and talk about it. But mums aren't asked how they're going to deal with their boys when they reach puberty and things like that. But it's just, and that's why I said, I'll sit down with her, we'll get a book, and I'll take her to the shop and do exactly what any parent would do. And I don't understand why we don't teach boys about periods and menstruation as well, because if they're heterosexual, every girlfriend they have will have periods as well. So a cursory understanding, it shouldn't just be, this is secret women's business.
No, exactly. Exactly.
It should be
something they're aware of. Yeah, they're not going to be scared of it when eventually, as you say, they grow up and they come across it. It's going to be something they've been spoken to about for years. It's a natural part of everyone's life, isn't it? All these things. Yeah. And my friend said to me the other day on that subject that at least you've got girls. I've got two boys, so I'm going to have to change crusty bed sheets when they hit puberty. I said, that's true. Okay, I haven't got that to come at least.
Yep. And then everyone says, they'll say, what are you going to do when she starts dating? I've gone, well, of course I wanted to date. Why wouldn't I want her to date?
Yeah.
Like, oh, but you'll scare them off. I'm going, no, because if it's just ridiculous, because if there's something she feels uncomfortable or I feel uncomfortable about, I want her to come to me. I don't want to be the last resort.
And again, the example you're setting for her as she's growing up, and the role model you're going to be for her, and we all hopefully are for our kids, that when they do start dating, they know what to look for. They know the kind of person they want to be with, and they make, they'll make mistakes, but as you say, they'll come to us for support and they'll find their way like we all have to do.
Exactly.
So Michael, we're going to have to wrap up in a minute, which is I hate always wrapping up these podcasts, so I could go on for hours talking to all people like you. So is there any sort of final, so we want working fathers to come forward, we want working fathers to stand up, not just working fathers, but any fathers to stand up and be heard. What can people do to get hold of you? And is there anything you want people to do to maybe share their stories with you or anything like that?
You can always go to my website, michaelray.com.au. I'm fairly prolific on LinkedIn, and I speak to different organisations. So if you feel like you're an organisation whose shared parental leave is lower than what it should be, that's where I like to go in and talk to dads about the importance of their stepping up and how maybe to encourage it. But apart from that, the main thing I would like mums and dads to call out some of the outdated gender stereotypes. And, I think I saw one where your government just released a picture of mum doing all the work and dad laying on the couch, 3 different things. So call out marketing. My daughter and I were in the supermarket a while ago, and out of the blue, she said, Dad, why are there no boys on any of the packets? And I hadn't even noticed this. So we photographed it. There's a post on LinkedIn. We photographed 28 products that had people on them. Out of that 28, there were only 3 with men on them. Everything from dishwashing liquid, laundry powder, baby products, baking products, cleaning products. Everything there had a woman on it. So basically, there was one organic nappy that had a really groovy dad with dreadlocks.
Yeah.
It looked so cool, it made me jealous. And there was Mr. Sheen and Mr. Muscle, a drain cleaner.
Okay, Mr. Muscle, of course.
Yeah, and that's what I said. So my daughter, she was 8 at that stage, was being told that domestic duties, anything within the house, is your domain. And it's just not good enough for marketers to do that. And we need, as much as we need a 50-50 representation and diversity inclusion for not just men and women, but non-binary and ethnic and all the rest of it, we need inclusion in all levels of organisations to get great outcomes. We also need, mums and dads to be represented equally in all spheres of, our society, just because it just takes it away that it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. It means I have to get my husband to clean our drains later, because obviously I'm not allowed to do that because it's got Mr. Muscle on the packets.
Yep.
So Michael, thank you so much. Have a lovely hot day over in Australia. It's pouring with rain at the moment in the UK in the morning.
It's nice and warm here.
I know, I can see just by the background how warm it is there. So have a lovely day, and lots of love to Charlie and yourself as well. And I hope we'll speak again one day soon.
Definitely. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Michael.
Aisha.
Cheers then. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, clarity through crisis says it all, doesn't it, really? And obviously it's such a shame that Michael had to go through everything he did to get to that point, but he is such an inspirational man, not just for fathers but also for mothers, definitely. I know that I found it an inspirational conversation. So I think really it's a message to us all to be as positive and involved as we can with our children's upbringing, whether that's a mother to a daughter, mother to a son, father to a daughter, or father to a son. So I hope you enjoyed listening, and I'll see you next time.